Thank you to all of you joining us today. We're talking about how association teams can embrace new ideas for the bottom line. This is an idea that is obviously very important right now with everything we're dealing with during this current COVID landscape. So thank you for taking the time to join us and be with us today. My name is Carolyn Shomley. I am the community manager for PAR. Just a few quick housekeeping notes. If everyone wants to open their chat module, you can do that by clicking on the chat bubble at the bottom of your screen. If you have any technical questions today, you can chat to me directly. I am the host, and I can help you walk you through those. And then, really a great thing about webinars is we can have a dialogue, a conversation, some Q&A. So feel free to open up your chat to all participants to get some conversation going, and we'll have a little Q&A at the end of the session today. Again, I said my name is Carolyn, and I'm joined here by Sean. Why are we the ones here talking to you today about new ideas? This is a topic that a lot of us are really searching for right now. How can we generate new ideas? Well, Sean, I think, is the perfect person to talk about this. He's worked with a lot of associations over the years, helping them generate new ideas. But Sean himself has also generated new ideas, starting High Fidelity Group, which works closely with associations, WebVent, and then PAR, which we're really excited about, Professionals for Association Revenue. So, Sean, thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to pass the ball to you. PAR's been a great start right now that a lot of people are needing to get some new ideas. What is it about PAR that really excites you?
I think so far, we had set out, thanks, Carolyn, we had set out to really just improve the culture around association business development. We are working hard to understand how much associations and their mission impacts the things that we're selling. And I know that there are so many folks that are tuning in that are interested in all the moving pieces, how they can help make it work maybe a little bit more smoothly. And for those of you who don't know Carolyn, thanks for the great intro, Carolyn. Carolyn comes to PAR and the association world actually with a background in television production, and most specifically around national sports. She's been a key part of my favorite baseball team, and that's the Orioles. And I think we just lost everybody from Boston today, so sorry about that. But, yeah, she's been working with the Orioles for a lot of years and producing some of their shows. And the cool thing is like Carolyn's noticing a lot of different avenues and approaches to ideas within the association market, and we're going to talk about some of that today. We're going to really just take a moment to explore the power of ideas and what makes up those ideas and what gives them their energy. We'll talk a little bit about understanding the role that revenue plays in a lot of you are dealing with new ideas around revenue and digital meeting and transitioning to new tactics really to attract your markets. And so we'll be talking a little bit about what revenue's role is in those discussions. And what we hope are 4 tips that we've learned over the course of many years in associations, working on new program development, and even we have an opportunity to share some case studies that I would actually call them working and in progress. So, we're all kind of in this together. And so thinking about a case study, I usually is like that work's been done and documented. Well, these projects are ongoing and have had varying degrees of success, but both of them have included the ideas that we'll share today. I mean, Carolyn, I know that you we started talking about this webcast. We really just sort of said, why do we even need new ideas right now? And I think everyone's got their fair share. The reality is in the association market is that many of us have had really the same business model for many years. And that could be, annual conference, maybe even smaller meetings throughout the year that feed into or are the flagship of what we do the remainder of the year, whether that's magazine advertising or other non-dues opportunities, or even how we engage members. So if our members are used to meeting and gathering on those shows at those conferences, Well, that's being disrupted here at an unprecedented scale. And, with those business operation fluctuations, we're really having to understand how to manage change. And that is something that I think a lot of us just haven't had to go through before, or have varying degrees of success with it. Whenever you have something that's not predictable, the risk factor goes way up, and our ability to be consistent goes way down. So how do we kind of take what we know, develop it for where we are as an industry, as industries, and move it forward? And I know those of you on the line right now who are in business development, we are too, and we understand how challenging the landscape is right now. But there's also some really great opportunities to connect and talk with your customers, maybe in a way that you haven't done before. And Carolyn, I know you had an example of an organization that we could all kind of relate to. I mean, I've got several devices I'm sitting in front of me right now from Apple, and I know you wanted to talk about how an idea can be transformative.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm sure those on the call today have experienced some form of education in the business practices of Apple. And it's with good reason. They've got some pretty impressive business practices that have caused them to become such a global brand. But I think what Apple signifies is the fact that new ideas really have the power to transform. Like you said, Sean, we're all impacted by it every single day. Our smartphones, our tablets, and just the way that we communicate. So ideas in general for Apple is something that, this is a way that they've built their company with grand ideas. But I think the really unique thing about Apple is, they struggled. They had a lot of challenges that they faced, particularly in the mid 90s. They were experiencing a big drop in revenue, 30% drop in 1996. The competition that they had all this time with Microsoft, Microsoft was really establishing themselves as kind of the leader in the computer industry. And this brand that we know now that they've since developed was really having a hard time kind of finding its focus. Where is our focus? What is it that we really want to hone in on, and what do we want to do? So at that point, Steve Jobs comes back to the company, and it's been well documented kind of the whole path that followed after that. He obviously did a lot of things when he came back, but I think the one that we can focus on, that we can apply to today, is the fact that he kind of simplified things. Steve Jobs took a great view of the landscape of what Apple was doing and what they were selling, and he found that they were selling too much. He would ask people, what product should I buy? And they couldn't tell him because they didn't really know what the products were. Salespeople didn't know how to sell them. So he said, you know what, we're going to simplify. And I think that's a lesson that right now what we all can experience in this challenging time. Sometimes it is time to simplify. He cut their product inventory back to 4 products total, 2 for consumers, 2 for professionals, and they went from there. Now, granted, he made a lot of other decisions and had a lot of other great ideas that got them back on track, but they went from being nearly extinct. And, later he said about 90 days they would have been, extinct as a company, to really increasing their revenue the year following his return, and this kind of simplicity that they instituted. They had a over $300 million profit. So I think, and if we go to the next slide, we'll see one thing that Steve had to say was, sometimes simplicity is deciding what not to do is just as important as deciding what to do. It's true for companies. It's true for products. So I think that's one area where a brand that is so recognizable to all of us, we can really, take note of that right now.
I think it's important to point out, a lot of people, it's hard to, I think everyone's in a vice right now and having challenges. 30% revenue loss is something that many organizations, that might be in a good category in 2020, right? And I think right now, because that urgency exists, being able to find focus on the things that we're building and the ideas that we're sharing with our markets is going to be critical. But it's also critical to help our markets transact and consume the information quickly and easily, right? I just remember, you had this great quote from Steve Jobs. I do remember how much he talked about, at the end of the day, wanting his products to make the lives better, his users' lives better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's a valuable lesson, right, for us to be thinking about as we're in create mode. I know that the other thing, too, is just we're all sort of searching for new ideas, right? So how do we stand out? And obviously Apple's done a great job. There's a couple of other organizations that bubble up and how they serve their customers. But how will ours stand out in what's really become a crowded marketplace? I appreciate everyone logging in today, but I also know that competing for everyone's attention right now are a slew of opportunities and ideas. Are you getting these same things, Carolyn? Are you getting all these invitations?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I think that's an important lesson for us, too, in developing PAR and developing these webcast series is that, in order to stand out, you really have to provide value. Why am I going to devote my time to something if I'm not sure there's a value in it? So that's a really important lesson.
I agree. And, besides not being able to print this slide because of my role as my eighth job as a counterfeiter, the thing that I learned from this quote that you had shared with me is by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. I know it seems like a heavy one because that's just something that maybe we, if you're in business development, you're always, it feels like you're always preparing. You're preparing for a presentation. You're preparing for a slide deck. You're preparing your rate card or your media kit or for your meeting or your follow-up. I mean, so much into it. And when we're working with teams to create these new ideas, I think the lessons learned on ideation from even Apple, it's about finding a few folks that have ideas that you can consume. It might be the way that they present the information. It might be their web page or their landing page or how they're getting customers to it. Understanding that user experience and starting with the customer first, so customer-focused ideas plus planning will eventually lead to revenue opportunities down the road. So thanks for introducing this quote to me. But we were talking a little bit about Apple, but how does this relate to associations? And right now we'll talk a little bit about revenue's role in new ideas. So Carolyn, when you're thinking about a budget, right? I mean, particularly if you had an objective for 2020 and those objectives are in limbo, one place to start with your new idea is to understand what type of revenue connection you want it to have. Do you need that? Do you need this new idea to be revenue producing, revenue neutral, or are you okay with it to be an investment, in which case you would lose revenue? There may be opportunities no matter where you start on the spectrum, and I've learned that over the years. I've had some products that one year did poorly, and I guess if you really think about the investment of time and energy that went into the products, they maybe we just with some adjustments we were able to turn them around. And so kind of understanding how you need to grow, keep, or invest in these new ideas is critical. And it's important for the whole team to understand that, because while your sales team is customer-facing, the experience that the people they're selling to, well, that involves everyone on our teams. And, one thing that kind of needs to be from the get-go, particularly if your new idea, I know so many of us are transitioning to virtual meetings or some variation of digital inventory from our in-person inventory. that mission of yours needs to bridge to a business interest that your customers have. So, I mean, we could build it, but if it doesn't solve the needs of our folks that we're selling to, our customer audience, then it needs to take a step back and do that first before our sales team's pushing it out of the market. Does that sound like I know that there's a few sales folks on the line. Hopefully they'd agree with that point. And everyone, if you're a business, even if you're not in business development, maybe you're just in development and you're working through new products or ideas. If you have questions and you want to throw them out, please go ahead and chat right here. So why is the bridge important to a business interest, Carolyn? Well, I think that we've got to classify our revenue objective and think critically about it to fine-tune the product before we even get started. And what the heck do I mean by that? Well, we want our sales teams, our business developers, the people who are producing, we want them to prioritize relationships. And really, in the new, what I call the new 2020, that is going to be the key to us bridging this time period into some form of normalcy, is allowing our producers to have that ability to prioritize relationships, not to talk about refunds and service issues and something that maybe wasn't thought through. What time is it going to be? How am I going to be involved? Having all the experience steps of what your business partner, your sponsor, your exhibitor is going to experience is critical for your sales team, because if you send that sales team out without understanding what the client expectations are, they are going to simply spin wheels. And so being able to come back and say, hey, we've spoken to a couple of our clients, this is an issue, can you fix it? So be a little nimble with that is going to be important. But it all starts with understanding how this new idea relates to the bottom line. And in doing that, it allows us to streamline what our workforce is doing. If it's not clear, the product will not resonate. What happens when you're for those of you who are kind of new to new ideas, meaning like we're transitioning from age-old practices or even decades-old practices into something new, if that revenue goal is not clear, then it will be very challenging to the sales team to match it to what the customer's expectations are. So have that up front, have that conversation up front, and when you're talking about these transitions, make sure that this is part of it. Carolyn, one thing I always like when we're working through, we're big on lists, right? So even in our little teams, we even go as far as to print our lists on our stationery, right, just to make sure that we're keeping track of things. I find that with new ideas, sometimes you're looking at it from a varying degrees of perspective, whether that's finance, sales, education, because we're in association market, so education and mission comes into it. And I always feel like some tips are helpful. So I thought we could go into a few now. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one way to have a takeaway, from everything is to make sure that you have some clear, concrete roadmaps.
For sure. And everybody, if you've got some tips that you've used, we would love to share them with everybody listening. I'll tell you that not only from a people who are on perspective, but so far with our webcast, we've learned that folks go back and learn. So if there's something that you found that's helpful in the short term, please let us know and share it, and we'd be happy to talk about it. Okay. I am wearing a sales hat right now, everybody. So as someone who needs to be responsible for bottom line production around teams and activity, I'm going to give you what I think is important to consider from the business development standpoint. And the first thing is start with a why metric. What the heck does that mean? Really, I'm trying to get you to create a value proposition to get into the door with customers. For example, if you're transitioning from a live event to a digital event and you're not quite sure, maybe you've done a little bit of homework, but you're not quite sure what the uptick is. You may even be wondering, like, I don't know how many people are going to want to buy a sponsorship for a virtual event or a virtual series or an online directory or online content, whatever you've got. Start with a why metric. Why would they? Well, they might because, just as an example, 85% of your attendees last year wanted distance learning as part of their experience. What if 50% of your members are in need of CEU hours, and this is going to be a bellwether for them to get together? It could just be that your audience in general wants connection and is thirsty for it. And how about the shortest survey of all time, Carolyn? Like if diving deep into those metrics isn't available to you and your sales team doesn't swim in that kind of information normally, totally okay. Give them something that they could put a feather in their cap, an arrow in their quiver, and really just sort of ask folks online, ask folks on your LinkedIn communities. We're putting this together. Will you participate? Why would you participate? Get some information about it around a metric that you can use to inform customers about why we're doing this. It's not just, hey, we're not going to have a live event, so we're doing this. That's not a metric. That's not going to be able to help me match what the customer wants to get out of this type of experience. They want to know why we continue to connect. And guess what? As associations, one of the good elements and good experiences that I've had, I know we're all going through some challenging times, but I have enjoyed being able to get on the phone with customers and talk with them about what they're doing, how they're staying in front of their customer base. And I find that a lot of people have this why metric as they lead into conversations. They might even feel uncomfortable at times to reach out to customers. So it's totally okay just to say, look, I wanted to connect with you. We are dealing with some transitions and changes. I wanted to make you aware of it and learn a little bit more about how you guys are doing in the marketplace. Is there anything special you've been doing for your customer base? And it's a lesson. It gives and takes, you know. It's a wonderful way to kind of get started. Have you had anybody reach out to you, Carolyn, with a message that kind of resonated during all this that you can think of?
Yeah, nothing like in particular jumps out, but I think what you say about communication as a whole, it's such a valuable lesson that I think we're learning really tenfold right now during this time, is that communication, is so key. And maybe you don't think you have much of value to reach out and say, but I think sometimes often just the gesture of reaching out, that alone, goes a long way. So I think it's been a good lesson in just communicating overall.
I agree. And I'll say again that I've seen some tremendous things that I know the associations we work with and associations in general are doing to stay in front of their membership with information that they can use. We're connected through careers. We're connected through occupations and areas of service, and those things are powerful. It's exciting to see how other people are tackling this time, and it can give inspiration. And trust me, those are things that our business partnerships, our sponsors, they want to connect. They want to connect with you on that. And that leads me to developing ideas, tip number 2, and that is before you share your details with the world on your transition or new idea, make sure it's connecting to customer value from the start. We're all doing this digital transition. Some of us are better prepared than others. I understand that. But just because we're pivoting to virtual does not mean I believe that you will be connecting me to my customers if I'm a business partner of yours or a sponsor of yours or even just an exhibitor, however you guys are in particular built. Your mission, though, does connect me to that customer. There's something that I'm producing that those folks need and they may trust. And guess what? Those same folks are those same members. They are trusting the information that is going out to business partners and to them as a member. Define what that value is. So if it's being a part of this means that you're going to be a market leader, tell them how. If being a part of this new idea is meaning that you are going to be a thought leader, tell them how. And, you know, if their goals or objectives are conversion or maybe just getting people to go to their destination, maybe their website or their profile or whatever however they're connected to you digitally, make sure that you explain how that's going to happen. You're connecting your new idea to something the customer has always wanted, right? And that is connection to similar people that you share relationships with. So one thing that did come up as we were building this, Carolyn, I had someone reach out and say, you know what's driving me crazy is we're launching this new event and clients want email addresses, but we don't do that as an association, and you shouldn't. There's a GDPR involved there, obviously, and that can be a hassle. So, or instead of a hassle, it's an opportunity, right? So depending on how you look at it, but for your clients who want those email addresses, I get it. It's a conversion challenge. So there's another way to go. You know that they want those email addresses. We can't provide those. We have to be stewards of our members. So is there another way to reach those folks digitally? So guide where they can measure the value instead of hoping it makes it later, hoping that they'll buy into one day or a series of days or a prolonged period of visibility. Connect it from the get-go. So understand that you may have some of these objections from your customer base and use it to inform where you guys are going to present value. I use the GDPR example because that's one that someone had shared while we were working on this presentation today, but there could be any number of things like your attendance. So if you got a huge attendance and you are transitioning to digital, well, what's that going to look like for me as one of 10 sponsors? Quantify it. Share how they're going to be part of the outbound effort of the emails and that they're part of this new 2020 that we're all in together. Show them how. Know that they're going to be asking you about that and make sure you connect to value from the start. One thing that, Carolyn, I know for our baseball fans out there, I know that, you know what, the Orioles do an awesome job of this, of this point. Okay, they do. And maybe it's because we haven't been to the World Series in a while, but we're a town that loves to connect through story. And we've got a couple of ball players in the history there that are pretty phenomenal and nostalgic. And you know what? It matters when we're going through a time now without baseball, yeah? So what I mean about being true to your story is make sure that your mission is connected from where you are right now to where you're going and what this product is in between. Celebrate the role that your business partners, exhibitors, sponsors, supporters, or members are going to have in the future of your industry. So we're all right now really geared up to have these digital events and trying to make them work in short, urgent time periods. And they can work. But I would recommend that they're part of a story that leads your customer a little further down the path when things hopefully normalize. And even if they're not very normal in 6 months, you will still have wonderful opportunities to help them position their business to members. And this is just part of that. So make sure that it's true to your story for where we are now, where we've been through together, and where the industry's headed next. And then our final tip of today is make and keep a promise. And this is crazy hard. I get it. It's a team effort, so it's important to help everyone understand their role in how we are positioning these new ideas outwardly. And if your new idea, by the way, is internal, and there's a lot of great internal ideas happening right now, the way we work, the way we process, the way we communicate as teams, it goes the same way. Make sure we understand the role we have with this new idea, who its caretakers are, and that will help us make and keep our promise. So, for example, did you try this new idea and maybe you missed the registration target that you had set out to make for whatever the new idea is, but maybe it's, again, going back to that digital example. Well, look for and incorporate feedback. Look what a reasonable, start with what a reasonable objective might be for attendees and be able to share that. You can get creative with existing options too. So if you look at your new idea and your new offering and you're like, I don't know, it's kind of, it's hard to take, a 10,000 person meeting and host something one day and expect it to check all the boxes. It might not. It likely won't. But what it could do is create a opportunity for the folks you're working with to gain important visibility at a time when they have a captive audience, and then connect it with other products that you guys have. So if even if that's moving into next year, even if you have a base of exhibitors that you've had to move their investment into next year and you've got this gap between now and then, well, there's plenty of ways to fill it, and talk to those business partners about how they're working with their audiences. And if you've said that you're going to go after 1,000 attendees for this event, everything you do needs to be informed around that objective, because it helps show the folks that we're trusting to help us get through this. It helps show them that we're committed to where everyone is now, and let that kind of soak in for a minute. If you've got a attendee objective, what are we doing realistically to make that attendee objective happen? Are we offering early incentives? Are we offering something interesting if they join? All those things kind of come into play. And I know we've got a couple of quick examples that we wanted to share for folks that are putting new ideas into action and seeing some success. And we've got a great one here. Carolyn, I know you are working with Jay. He's one of our PAR advisory, Leadership Advisory Board members, and he works with URSA. Tell us a little bit about what URSA is up to.
Yeah, this is really the exciting part for me about PAR, is that we're going to have such great access on our website, especially to examples of associations who've implemented ideas that have really worked well for them, and they're able to share that with us. URSA, something that they've been doing since back in 2017, is they implemented this paid supplier program. And what that is basically an advertiser or a paid supplier of the health club members comes to URSA and says, hey, we really want more exposure than just a banner ad on your website or a quick ad on your website. And URSA, in turn, says, well, we need content on our website. So they kind of work together, and what they're able to do is write a really valuable article, bringing value to their health club members about a particular topic that their paid supplier, their advertiser, is able to also get across their brand and what they're able to provide for the health club clients. And, and Sean, in listening to your tips and your steps, I can apply every single one of these to what URSA has done and what Jay's told me about URSA. They started with their why metric, and for them, they had been hearing from advertisers that they wanted more valuable content. They also looked at some outside statistics. In the article, Jay mentions that they looked to HubSpot, who said that 81% of B2B companies were looking for some kind of original content to advertise. So for them, right then and there, that's their why, why they were doing this. Your second tip about connecting to customer value from the start, URSA had made a decision that they wanted all of their online content to really focus on ensuring that the health club members and the health club operators were gaining really valuable educational information. So, that was their value as URSA. And then as the advertisers, the value for them was that they wanted a better way to get across their products. And so this kind of marriage between the product and the articles began. The third tip about being true to your story, again, I think that goes hand in hand with value and the customer value. As I said, URSA's goal is to help health club owners and operators build and run the best clubs that they can. So they really felt and they feel that this paid supplier program is a way that they can stay true to this story. They're sharing information, they're sharing resources. And then I think what the most interesting thing is, making and keeping a promise. The way that they've gone about doing this and writing these articles has a lot of value. They have written over 100 articles since 2017. Wow. And they increased their content revenue by 95% in implementing this plan. I think the really unique thing is that during COVID, when selling is really difficult for a lot of associations, this is actually one program that they're continuing to sell. I just spoke to Jay the other day, and he said, they sell about 3 to 5 a month of these articles that they're still producing. So, I think it's a great example that when you kind of follow these tips and you stick true to your story and you really believe in the value that you're providing and connecting to your customers, that, good things will happen. And in this case, the revenue especially has been a big bonus for them.
That's awesome. I mean, I've read this article that we have ready for the website, of course, and I follow URSA on LinkedIn, and if you don't, you should, if you're in associations, because they regularly will share awesome member stories. Just as an example, obviously their members own fitness facilities and gyms, and there was just a quick video post on how one Asian gym was beginning to open, what they were doing to prepare. And in a matter of moments, you were seeing how that particular gym was taking on, the experience of when you walked through the door to when you jumped on a machine. And their members and board have been very vocal on their plans to get through where we are right now. And honestly, I look at them as a great example of kind of bridging the mission and being true to that story and letting that inform the way they're approaching their business partnerships. So I want to say, too, for those of us in not in association development, maybe you're in publishing or content areas, there is going to be a remarkable shift in the way we allow our business partners to be part of those conversations and stories. There's always been this separation of church and state. Sometimes I get it, and then other times I'm like, well, in some ways, these business partners or exhibitors, they may have larger audiences than we do. There's opportunity for both in both directions. And we've taken that to heart in some of the work that we've been doing too. And I appreciate you sharing this about Jay, his team, and URSA. Thank you. I know we got one more, and this one I'll jump in to share because part of our team is involved. And the Society for Clinical Research Sites, they have a meeting coming up in July in Australia, New Zealand, and obviously they are needing to transition that into a virtual event. So their why is simple. It's really a region that has had a tremendous amount of growth for them in the last couple of years. That conference has improved 10 to 20% in attendance each of the last few years that they've had it. And this year was the first year they've branded it as just Australia and New Zealand. It used to be the Asia Pacific market. So how do they keep in touch with the attendees and maybe even grow the audience in that area? Well, they started with understanding that they'd have 275 or so folks at that meeting live. So there's your bar. There's the next piece of the puzzle, and that's connecting it to value. So if they had 270 folks, is it possible that they could maybe get more than 275 on the webcast? Potentially. And so for them, their revenue needs to be in a situation where they can try to keep some of that support in this calendar year. So by doing that and understanding that 275 is sort of that goal, they opted for 4 dates over one, because that gave them 4 opportunities to even increase the value higher. Not just one day of 275, but maybe you can get 275 or more over the course of a month. And I thought that was a really unique way to kind of look at it and go, hey, those higher numbers that we're shooting for, that's trying to make and keep, even improve on the promise that we had relative to the attendee base that would have attended in Melbourne. And then lastly, to be true to their story, and I'm out of order on my tips, but to be true to your story, part of being part of their association is an organizational membership. And in that region, it's a lot of hospitals. Healthcare is slightly different there in all parts of the world. And obviously, clinical research right now is critically important for where we are through the pandemic. And so they would like, as part of the transition for organizations that are willing to support them, they would like to award a digital scholarship to attendees that qualify for the webinar series. And what's really cool about that is it's unique, and it's another way for SCRS to attract folks to that webcast series. So that is a work in progress, but excited to hear from their manager, Marcus, that the first conversation he had was with a major pharma, and they agreed to make the transition. So congratulations to SCRS, and hopefully that will help lead the way on some next steps for their organization. So in summary, start with a why metric, connect to customer value from the start, be true to your story, and make and keep a promise to all your constituents. I know we had some Q&A, but before we get into some questions, I thought it would be helpful to give everybody some homework, right? So my request of everyone on the line today is to go ahead and, when we finish up, define your why metric around whatever you are working on right now. So if you're working on a new digital product, if you're working on a new partnership program, or maybe you're working on a new member campaign, focus on your why metric for just 10 minutes. See what comes out of that exercise. And if you get a chance, challenge the people on your team in the same way. See what they have to say. In terms of questions, one of the ones that came over was around the email component of going digital, and I thought I'll just really, really quickly share what I meant by that, just for further clarification. So many of our folks are looking for conversion opportunities. Many business partners, exhibitors, sponsors, they're looking for that conversion opportunity that they would have potentially had at a live event. That's something that is very challenging to repeat when you have the chance to actually physically see someone, exchange conversation and ideas in person, and move forward. So if you can't do that and you're not able to share emails because of the limitations that we might have as member organizations, it's a unique way to really look at it and say, hey, how do we get people's message to the folks that would have registered? So two things I've seen people do is really highlight the marketing around the emails that are going out to the full membership. Okay, so make sure that there's a unique spot for your sponsors in that communication. There's visibility there that's valuable. And then on the back end, ask your attendees. We could really use your help in connecting with the folks that were kind enough to support this virtual event or this virtual series. Would you please allow us to share your information with those folks? So offer an opt-in path. And if that still doesn't exist, there's an opportunity then to have a follow-up email that includes a message from your supporters to the people that attended your event. So there's a couple of ways to at least, is it worth the squeeze? I think it is. It's worth the squeeze. I think there's some juice there that'll help us increase the value of our program. Carolyn, did you have any others that came through?
I did not. No, I don't see any others. But I think moving forward, this is a great way to kind of get a dialogue going. And like we shared a few examples with everyone of some great ideas. It's also awesome for our attendees to these webinars to share some of their own ideas as well.
I agree, and everyone, we're really excited to be taking steps closer to launching PAR with you, and for our folks in revenue-producing roles around the world, really, for associations. We really feel like now is going to be a critical time in workforce development and talent development around business, around how you could develop business and those connections. And so we're excited to be launching this community here shortly. It's looking like July. It's looking like the very beginning of July. Of course, we've got a holiday or a pandemic in our way all the way through. But the most satisfying thing is there's not thousands of people on our webcasts. But what happens is we're getting feedback from folks after our webcasts around the topics and challenges that they're going through, and some just even having a voice or a way to talk with peers is going to be really, really critical. So that's what we hope PAR brings to you, and we're excited to get it going here shortly. It will include a full landscape survey when we launch, and you'll be able to check that out along with articles designed really around what we do every day, and that's connect with customers and try to improve revenue health for our organizations. With that, we're trying to give you back a few minutes in your day and want to thank you. We will be talking about digital strategies and is it responsive, reactive, or both here in a few weeks as more and more folks transition to new digital formats. We thought it'd be appropriate. And Carolyn, I know that you and I will be tuning in together for that here shortly. So thank you for hosting, and thank you everyone for checking us out today.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we will send a email out tomorrow with a recording of today that you'll be able to access online. So thanks, everybody, and have a great day. Bye, Sean.
Thanks. Bye-bye.